Welcome to the Narrate podcast. I'm Caleb, part of the Narrate team. This week is part 2 of a series called Speak. Words are powerful. They have the power to change lives, but they can also be very destructive. This week, Adam talks about why complaining is such a terrible thing.
So this we started this series a couple weeks ago or last week called Speak. And really what we're trying to do is grab hold of a tension that I think we all feel, and that is that words take on a life of their own. That they're a unique thing because we have them in abundance. They're free, so to speak, and yet therefore it's really easy to take them lightly. And yet what we tried to do last week was just to rock back and go, wait a minute. Who you are and the way you think about yourself and the way you process life has much to do with words that have been spoken to you, and thus that says something about every word you speak. And so we just try to pay attention to all that. And let me just say kind of on the front end, listen, I understand that you have enough to work on that you could never learn a new idea for the rest of your life and still have work to do. And so we try not to do that in Narrate, just to overwhelm us with areas and ideas to work on. And so the goal here is not that in the next month we would perfect our language. I get that's why we need Jesus. We're broken. The goal in my mind is they say it takes 37 days to change a habit. I don't know why it's not 38 or 36, but I guess that's just the way smart people are understanding it. But they say it takes 37 days to change a habit. And so my goal for us in this series, our goal for all of us in this series is that over the course of the next month or so that you would identify a couple bad habits as it relates to language. I mean, I have hundreds and thousands, so if you need me to borrow one to you, I would be glad to do that. But just that you just identify a couple and grow in them. And then maybe even that you'd identify with that a couple new habits that would be good habits. And 37 days later, you're not going to be a harmless person with words, but maybe you'll be less harmless. Maybe you'll be a little better. Last week, we actually even sent you out with a dart. I had no idea how aggressive of a church we had because I had several people comment how brave that was for us to arm you with darts while standing on the stage. I would have never thought you to be those types of people. So the goal here was that you would have something objective that you could keep with you for the 37 days, just kind of remind you words are darts, they stick, and so you'll see them scattered around the coffee and stuff, and if you weren't here last week or you have a dartboard at home, feel free to grab another. Moving into this week, I wonder how many of you were raised with this statement, some version of this statement. I'm not asking whether or not it was followed perfectly, but this was an ism that was repeated to you often, and it sounded something like this: if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Anybody? Was that a part of your growing up days? Both services, balcony people, you guys are fantastic with language. We're all terrible. Nobody in the balcony was raised. So that statement, really what I'd like to do over the next couple of weeks is point out, because I'm critical, which is what we're going to talk about this morning. This morning we're going to complain about complaining, because I like that. I think there's aspects of that statement that are profoundly misleading. That as a leader and a person and a friend and a spouse and a parent, we have to find ways, don't we? To say hard things, to say unnice things, so to speak. And so in a couple weeks from today, I want to kind of unpack some of that, and that's been an area of incredible growth for me as I've just come to have to realize as a leader that people don't just want to be patted on the butt and kissed on the cheek all the time, that they want the hard stuff to be pointed out to them as friends and parents and all those different things. But this morning where I want to zero in on is the part of that statement that is true. The part of that statement that you wish every person you lived with and every person you worked with and every person you go to school with and every person you're friends with would apply. The part that says that complaining is in some ways that we have a hard time quantifying, it's horrible. That negative language ruins environments, destroys cultures. Have you ever thought about why, though? I mean, this is kind of where I got stuck this week. I just had this moment where I was going in circles and going insane because I couldn't quite figure it out. But what I realized was there's this giant assumption. Why is complaining such a bad thing? And it seems that it doesn't matter what culture you want to talk about, what religion, what worldview, that there's this kind of collective sense that human wisdom tells us that negative speak is not preferred. That it's in most cases bad. I was driving one of my kids to school this week, and I don't know about you, but I don't listen to the lyrics of music. Are you one of those people you can't hear them? Which then I feel like an old person when I do hear them, because I'm like, what? They're singing about what? You can't listen to this. And I'm pretty sure that my parents said the same thing, but that is bad. You can't sing about that. Anyway, so my son said, he said, well, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, what didn't make any sense? I'm just listening to the drums, And he said, well, she just said that she wishes he would just throw caution to the wind and say everything that he's thinking. I said, why is that bad? And I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty good insight. Why is that bad? He said, because I think some really mean stuff sometimes, and I don't think I should say it. Wow. I guess he should preach the sermon. But why? I mean, even in the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, like when we look at the Bible, and I know many of you believe that like Jesus is the one. I believe he's the one. But so if you just look at that wisdom, like from the very early pages of scripture, you see these warnings about negative speech. Like remember Moses? He's this guy leading these people out of Egypt, and he gets into the middle of nowhere, and his sister Miriam starts griping. Remember this story? And she's going on and she's kind of complaining to the ranks of the people and creating quite a stir. And Moses figures it out and God figures it out. And you remember what God does to her? Like disease. He just like dumps disease all over her as if to kind of create this picture of she's not well. And then just a little bit later, God sends those 12 spies into the promised land to figure out whether or not they should go. And they come back, and 2 of them are like, yes, we should go. It's good land, and it's going to be hard, but God can do this. And 10 of them are like, no way, we shouldn't go. We're going to get toast. In fact, Egypt sounds nice. And they go like, you mean Egypt, the place where you were a slave forever and ever and ever, and you worked 7 days a week, and you didn't own anything, and your kids got taken from you? That Egypt? Yeah, that's better. I remember God gets really ticked. Because those 10, they keep talking about it and they keep complaining, and the 10 become 20 and the 20 become 400. And before you know it, the whole rank of Israel is going like, we want to go back to Egypt. Remember what God does? He gets so mad that he says, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to die. Like we're just going to kind of hang out here and walk in circles. It'll be like NASCAR, just left-hand turns all over and over again until you're all dead. And then we'll have a group of people that we can actually work with, and then we'll go into the promised land. And those people, they won't be complainers. And you get into the New Testament, and the Apostle Paul says some really straightforward things like, do everything without grumbling and complaining. That's a tough one, isn't it? Why? That's the question I got hung up on this week. Why is complaining such a big deal? And certainly there are layers and layers and layers of answers, but there's one that's been particularly relevant to where I feel like I've been getting worked over that I'm hoping will be useful to you as well. Because as I'll try to say 100,000 times this morning, I am complainer number 1. But it's going to feel like a tangent. So I'm going to feel like, what's he talking about? And then we'll kind of bring it back full circle, okay? So I was at this training, some of you know, a couple weeks ago. It was fantastic. Everybody should go. If I was a billionaire, I'd send all of you. But one of the things, this guy, John Townsend, who's one of the best corporate coaches in the whole world, one of the things he said is his definition of leadership was that a leader is someone who pushes the energy upward. Now, that's kind of a weird phrase, right? Like I heard him go, a leader is someone who pushes the energy upward. Like that, what is that? That sounds really weird. He referenced the laws of thermodynamics. Remember those? When you wrote them on your hand so you could pass the test your sophomore year? The laws of thermodynamics, first of all, speak to the idea that everything in creation is moving from order to disorder. It's why you always have to clean your room, because it doesn't move from like messy to clean. It moves from clean, from you have to clean it. So it moves from clean to messy. I'm not making any sense, but you're with me, right? The second law of thermodynamics that he really wanted to drill down on was that what we know about the created universe, and I don't understand this, but some of you are smart enough to understand this, is that energy is actually dissipating. Like the universe is losing energy. His point was that in every organization, in every office place, on every team, in any system that demands leadership, the reason it demands leadership is because the natural flow is for the organization to leak energy. Life happens, people get sick, people move, people take different jobs, there's disappointment, the economy happens, unforeseen natural disasters happen, things happen in life, and what happens to the office place, what happens to the energy in the office place is it dissipates. His challenge was, therefore, the reason we need leaders is their job, by definition, is to be the people who push energy back into the organization. They read books, they go to trainings, they do encouraging things, they say nice things, they give encouragement cards. They do things that cause the organization to be energized again. I had this fantastic conversation with Caleb shortly thereafter, and he was being vulnerable and just talking about a couple areas where he's leading and feeling like the leadership was kind of dissipating a little bit, like that somehow reflected poorly upon him. And I was like, no, wait a minute. Like, that's normal. That's what gives you job security. Like, the natural order of things is energy to spill out of the organization. Your job is to push it back in. You with me? Isn't that helpful? I was like, wow, that makes a ton of sense. But isn't what's true of every organization true of every relationship? Like marriage, isn't the reason why dating's easy and marriage is hard is because when you're dating, you've got one thing to do, push energy into the relationship. And then you get married and like all the things you haven't done for 2 years, they need to happen again. And suddenly life happens and energy is pouring out of the relationship. And the reason we need date nights and weekends together and to stay up late after the kids go to bed and have a conversation is because those things push the energy back in, right? Like the natural flow of any relationship. Isn't that why we do things with our kids? As it pushes energy back into the relationship or friendship. Aren't your best friendships programmed? Like we kind of have this, I don't know, I think unrealistic idea that our best friends are the ones that just spontaneously happen and phone calls happen and we just kind of spontaneously are friends. Is that true for you? Or are your closest relationships planned? Do they show up on your calendar? Do you actually plan experiences together? See, it pushes energy back in, doesn't it? So here's the way I've been thinking. What if a major reason why the scriptures and human psychology and all cultures and all, what if the reason why they talk so much about how terrible complaining is because complaining is its own leak from the relationship? Like complaining it constantly leaks energy. See, if you're married to a complainer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like they're great and you love to spend time with them and she's pretty and you have this great family and you've got this nice house and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes there's just something you can't put your finger on it. Maybe you have. Maybe you're putting your finger on it now. Like to be married to a complaining person, what does it do to the relationship? It's kind of miserable. Think of friendships. Ever started a friendship and it seemed really promising and like, ooh, we've got this friendship going and this is going to be awesome. And then all of a sudden, like there's this problem and actually the relationship started on this problem. Like we're navigating this problem together and you're going like, I'm going to be a good soldier. I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to listen and I'm going to help them process this problem. And then suddenly what happens is you realize you've worked through this problem, but now you're just on to the next problem. Then you're on to the next problem and the next problem, the next problem. And what happens to that friendship? Right? Why? Isn't it because complaining, it just drains. Ever been on a team with a complainer? Those of you that lead and hire and manage, own, isn't your greatest fear in the whole world hiring negative Nelly? Like what can that do to an office place? What can that do to a staff? Like your staff, they come in and they walk in the door on Monday and they're energized and they're excited and they walk into the first meeting with that person or that gal swings by their cubicle and suddenly there's a bleh, right? It's just a drain, isn't it? But you know what I think the real danger here is? I think, and I wonder if the reason why the scriptures bear down on this so intensely, I think complaining is one of those things that's really, really hard to see in the mirror. Like, you elbow the person next to you, you think to yourself, oh man, I got to send the podcast of this one to this friend. But it's really difficult to go, oh, he's talking to me. Like that's me. It's really, really difficult. So here's my goal this morning, is first to convince you you're a complainer, and then secondly to tell you there's hope, and then third to give you some tools. See, if you know everything that's wrong with everybody in your life, you might be a complainer. And if everybody in your life knows what you think is wrong with them, it's not a good sign. But see, the trouble is if you complainers come from family of origins of complainers. I think that's part of the trick. And so you were raised with it, and it was the way you grew up, and everything was always broken and wrong and what needs to be fixed. And now you go home for Thanksgiving, and all the conversation is about how big of a moron your boss is, and how you don't have enough money, and your house is broken down, and your spouse is from Mars, and the weather, it's terrible, and the economy, hopeless. It's really hard to see that you're in this cycle. You're in this closed system, and you just complain and complain and complain. If every boss you've ever had is a moron, it's a bad sign. If your resume has a different employer every 18 months, could be a sign that you are prone to focus on the negative. If your spouse, let's start with the kids one. If your kids, the older they get, the less time they want to spend with you. Here's one of the scary things to me about parenting. My kids have to spend time with me when they're in elementary school. In high school, I can make them, but I've seen that one as a youth pastor. It doesn't usually go well. When they're gone, They get to choose. And Paul, he talks about this. Listen to the way Paul says in Colossians. He says, fathers, do not embitter your children or they'll only become discouraged. Now, I think role reversal here, it's a different culture, it's a different day, it's fathers and mothers. But the image here is what? Like you ride your kids? I'm the worst at this. You just constantly correct. Paul's warning you going, hey, the distance is going to grow. If your kids are getting more and more distant, could be a sign. If your spouse is getting more and more distant, there's this brilliant, I think, hilarious picture that the Proverbs creates. Go ahead, Matthew. Better to live on the corner of a roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. Now, again, role reversal. But the image here, so this is Israel. They didn't have lots of land, so they built up. They didn't build out. So the idea here was they used their roofs. And the idea is this: I'd rather be in the corner of my roof than next to her. Like, what is the image there? Distance, distance, distance. You know how else you can tell if you're a complainer? You see that I'm really good at identifying this. It's because it all happens in the mirror. So don't take this personally. Like I could write books on complaining because I am the best. You know what else is a sign that you're a complainer? If over dinner, your favorite, most common topic is people. Like complainers talk about people. You know why? Because complainers, they like to talk about things that aren't perfect. And what do we have in great supply when it comes to things that aren't perfect? You, me, people. Like if your conversations and your friendships are built around talking around people, listen, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just trying to help you go like, whoa, that might be gross. You might be a complainer. Because the moment you decide I'm going to focus on what's wrong, there's tons and tons of resources at your disposal. Like follow me around for 5 minutes and I'll give you material for the next 2 days. Follow me around for an hour, you'll probably never come to church here again. Why? Because we're all screwed up. That's why we need Jesus. And if we're going to talk about is what's screwed up, then people are an incredible resource. In many cases, better than your business place, better than anything. And the other thing, if you're a complainer, you are a masterful triangulator. Ever heard that phrase? It's something that I'm learning. But here's what triangulation looks like. Unfortunately, I'm not left-handed, so I can't. So here's your relationships. Like here's them. Here's your friend, and here's you. And you guys have this thing going on. But then after like the fourth time you get together, you realize that they're broken or they make you mad. And so what triangulators do, what people who talk about people do, is they have a couple of these in their life that get a pass. Like they don't have to be perfect. But everybody else, what they do is they go over to here. And they form a new relationship with person A. And what is this relationship based upon? How big of a moron this person is. And triangulators, they talk to A about them, but they never talk to them about them. They just talk to A about them. And if they get their way, A talks to them about them. And so you just get to feed them about what their problems are. And eventually what happens is these people prove idiotic as well. And so you get a new friend, you get B, and you go down here. And what is this relationship based upon? How big of a moron A is. And the cycle goes over and over and over. Do you see how I mean, you can feel it in the room right now, can't you? Ugh. I've been having car problems. We have a nice car, and really what we've been having is battery problems, but I'm German, and so I want to perfectly know when does the battery have to be replaced. So I've known for about a year that the battery was getting weak, but it's not like when is it weak, it's like when do I have to buy a new battery, right? Like this is what us men do, is when is the day, and I'll get the new battery the day before. You with me? So that's been about a year ago that I've been kind of calculating this out. And then Thursday morning, a couple weeks ago, it was like 25 below. Remember that? My wife comes inside. Car won't start. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I'll get a new one after work. I call Caleb. Caleb swings over on his way to work. We jump it. Jump's kind of funny. I think to myself, I'll go get one after work tonight. Go to Costco, whatever, get a new battery. So I get home from work. Hey, how's the car? Oh, it started all day. Oh, sweet. Battery's good. Friday morning, car starts. Sweet, must have been like an anomaly. I don't know. Seems to be working fine. Saturday, car starts. Sunday, car starts. Monday, my day off, car starts. Tuesday, get to the office. Tree says, hey, car didn't start. It's like 30 degrees out there. Why is the car not starting? Grab Caleb's truck, drive home. jumpstart the car, and then it's jumping funny again. And so I pick up the phone and I call my friend who helps me with these things. I'm like, I think something might be going on here, and maybe there's something more than just a battery, and I'm describing it to him. And I have one of those aftermarket remote starts. Don't ever buy one of those. So this was put in before I bought the car, and he started saying, Adam, I think your problem's there. And so I went over to his house that night, and this was one of those electrical problems, right? Like they're never logical. We couldn't figure out. And he kept saying, here's what he kept saying. I think there's a parasitic leak somewhere in the system. Like somewhere within the electrical system, what's happening is in ways that we can't figure out, but over the course of the night, it's just draining the battery and it's just emptying the energy into nowhere. It's like hemorrhaging energy. That is the picture, I guess, that I want to suggest. I think that complaining does just that. But here's the thing, is if you can get to that place where you recognize that tendency, there's hope. And the reason why I say there's hope is it's like, hi, my name's Adam, and I am a consummate complainer. And part of what I'm coming to the realization of is, like, I've been working on this thing for 15 years. And yet it's like alcoholism. Yesterday, I fell off the wagon. I mean, like on my head, off the wagon. Bad news. It is not a tension that's ever going to not have to be managed. What I'm realizing is my propensity is strong. The force is strong with me. I remember saying to a friend a long time ago, like, the thing that takes the most discipline in my life is not being a complainer. And he went like, really? You don't strike me like that at all. And I was like, it's work. See, there's hope, and the hope comes, I just love the scriptures and the way it speaks to life even 2,000 years later. Listen to what James says. He says, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Question, is the ability to control a horse a positive or a negative thing in James's mind? Not a trick question. The ability to steer a horse, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing. Now, all you horse people, does the colt come out of the chute with the ability to be ridden? Are they born that way? I like the word shoot. I don't know. My two favorite birthing phrases are launch and shoot. I think they... Oh, gosh. Jesus. I could get off on lots of tangents right now, so let's just keep going. It's not natural, right? It takes discipline. Or look at the next one. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they're steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Image, of course, is a large vessel on the ocean subjected to all kinds of winds and natural currents that can actually be controlled. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing. That's why you can buy stuff at Walmart, because they can steer it over here. Now, natural or unnatural? Like, you just naturally take a giant log and throw it on the ocean. Is it natural or unnatural to be able to put that thing where you want it? It's unnatural. It takes discipline. Now, one more, because I know I'm being patronizing and I like to push it as far as I can. Where am I supposed to be? 5. Oh yeah, let's just read that. I was right. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. Fire, the ability to control it. A good thing or a bad thing? Natural or unnatural? Like, does fire, you just go like, hey, I'm just going to put you here, and fire just says, I'll just stay right here. No, it needs parameters. It needs boundaries. Now listen to what James, here's what he's getting at. The tongue also is a fire, or a horse, or a ship, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. See, James gets it. James knows that the tongue, left to its own devices, and of course, part of what James is arguing is the tongue, without God and the Holy Spirit's help, without outside influence, without control, without discipline, it just naturally makes a mess of things. Like, without discipline, will your kids brush their teeth? No. With discipline, will they? No. I mean, let me know if you figure that one out. I think there's hope. And I think the hope is you were equipped with something of incredible power. And it is a power that requires discipline. And so how do we not complain? Well, we, in the course of our life of being a church together, we've talked about this a lot because I am a consummate complainer. And the first one, and I'm not going to spend much time on this, I just kind of try to give you ideas because there's one that I really want to get to. But the first one is, of course, find the opportunity in every problem. And probably many of you know this. You've studied it in your sector, in your industry, within sports, within music, within the arts. The most creative, the most successful people, they're these people who were given a problem, and most of us would have kicked and screamed and gave up, and they somehow embraced the problem as an opportunity, and from that were born these beautiful things. And I think when it comes to not complaining, that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I mean, it's the first priority a long ways down the list. If you're someone that hasn't thought about this or is looking for some new thinking on this, I would recommend 4 books. Malcolm Gladwell, one of the most read authors in the world today, he's got a new book out called David and Goliath, which sounds super Christian-y, and that's what's awesome about it is he's not necessarily a self-identified Christ follower, though he's working it out in that book. But he uses David and Goliath as this example of David was given a problem, but he actually understood that it wasn't a problem, it was an opportunity, and there's some unique things there. But really the big idea of that book is how these most successful people in the world, they took things that other people treated as problems and went like, whoa, this is an opportunity. That's a great read. There's a book we worked on by Tim Sanders a couple years ago called Today We Are Rich, an incredible chapter in there. We did a message on it in our Attitude Check series a couple years ago. For those of you leading in the office place, in the marketplace, leading a team, our whole staff worked through a book called The No Complaining Rule. Really, really helpful, kind of helped set a tone and a set of parameters for us in the way we work as a staff. So there's some great stuff. And actually there's another one that just comes to mind called How to Steal Like an Artist. And he really points out the fact that we're all plagiarists and the most creative people, they grab ideas that everyone else treats as a problem. And so, I want to move past some of that. Because here's where I really want to drill down. And this is, I suppose, new to me, and thus the reason I'm hoping it'll be helpful to you. So sometimes we don't want to call a problem an opportunity. Would you agree? Sometimes we don't want to grab our, for all things work for the good coffee mug and go, for all things work for the good, and go, no, right now they're not looking that way. Sometimes we don't want to hear God is in control. He is in control. Doesn't look like it right now. Sometimes life hurts. It's confusing. It's frustrating. It stinks. Sometimes life is disappointing, and it makes you mad, and it makes you sad, and it makes you angry. And for me, here's where the new learning has been coming from, is sometimes part of what keeps us from gossiping is actually handling the feelings in healthy ways. And so here's what I want to say, and then I'll unpack this, is I think one of the best things we can do to keep ourselves from complaining is grieve with safe people. Go ahead, can we put that up there? Grieve, keep going. Okay, well, apparently we don't have it. But to learn to grieve with safe people. And here's what I mean by that. Especially us men, but I think especially those of us Christ followers, we have this habit of treating feeling as bad. And what we've been told is mind over matter. What we've been told is just deal with it. What we've been told is right feeling follows right action. And what I'm learning from guys like Cloud and Townsend as I study from them more and more is that the statement bad feeling is an oxymoron. That feeling it's a gauge that you can use to understand what's going on. And rather than stuff it, you find safe ways to process it. You find safe ways to give voice to it. So now let me share kind of an awkward, though I hope helpful example. Many of you will know that 2 weeks ago, Sarah, who's the right arm of me in this organization in many ways, helped us start this place in many ways, been with us for 4.5 years, she gave me her notice that she was done effective March 1st. Now, let me just be clear. I love Sarah. I'm very excited for the opportunity she's taken at St. Pete's. Jerks, they got a really good employee, but anyway, happy for them, all those things. That I don't want that to be misunderstood. But when she told me, I just looked at her and said, thanks. But I can't talk right now. I have nothing to say. And then I sat in my office, this was Thursday morning, and I just started feeling. I don't know if you ever have this experience, but sometimes I just feel. Of course you have this experience. And because of what I'm learning from Cloud and Townsend, quite frankly, I texted a friend who would be one of the safe people in my life, who I, by God's grace, already had a meeting with at 4 o'clock that day, and told him what was going on. It was just a simple, we're toast. I'm just kidding. It wasn't like that. It's just like, hey, Sarah just gave me notice. Sorry, that was sarcastic. And he sat down across from me at 4 o'clock, and he's like, so how you doing? And I went, bleh. And And in a way that I wouldn't have known to do before, I just tried to be as honest about what I was feeling as I possibly could. I knew it was invalid. I knew it was inaccurate. But for the first time, I was treating it as valid. And I began to talk it through. And what makes him safe is he didn't throw in with me. It wasn't this like all of a sudden like anti-Sarah party. He stood up for her at times. He steered the direction. He offered good perspective. But really what he did was to draw out what I was feeling. And I walked away from that conversation and felt better. 5 hours later or so, my wife came home from band rehearsal. And by then it was like, they just kind of, I thought it was gone. Emptied that tank. Tank's full again. Blah. Processed all that through with my wife. And again, she's a safe person for reasons like she didn't just make it worse. She made it better. She drew out feelings. She didn't take sides. None of those things. Next morning, again, thought I was better. Well fills up again. It's about 10:30. I'm supposed to be working on the sermon. I can't. I walk into Sarah's office and I said, listen, Sarah, I'm not trying to manipulate anything. I'm not trying to change the outcomes. I'm in support of you. I love you. But I do have some things I need to process because I'm fighting for the relationship right now. And we had this very comfortable, if not straightforward, 20-minute interaction. Felt better. Monday, I run with a friend every Monday. We run for a couple hours, and he's like, so how's your week? And I guess, if you want to know what happened in my week. And I just shared all of this. It's a big deal. What I realized after I was done sharing with him was this time I had shared in a way that was kind of emotionless. In fact, what I said before I even thought about what I was saying was, I'm really excited for her, really proud of her. It was an honor to work with her. And I'm kind of sad for us, but I'm also really excited for us. And it was all over, and I went, wow. I'm not necessarily feeling any of that negative stuff anymore. Like I've worked through it. Here's what Cloud and Townsend, what they're pointing out. They're doing tons and tons of research on PTSD. And what they point out is that you have two types of memory. Now, I'm not a therapist, but I can pretend to be like one. That you have a short-term memory and a long-term memory. Some talk about it like you have RAM and you have hard drive. What they're understanding about PTSD is PTSD therapeutically happens because we have a bunch of feeling. We have a bunch of thought. We have a bunch of emotion that comes with experiences. But what we do is we don't process them. And what they're understanding is when more and more feeling is stuffed, actually what happens is this pipeline, because it's supposed to be processed here and then stored here, this pipeline gets stuck, it gets clogged, or it gets cut off, however you want to portray that. And you know how the best therapists in the world today are treating PTSD? Talk to me about what you're feeling. This is going to take us a couple months maybe. But just talk. Okay, how does that make you feel? Talk to me about what you're feeling. And what they're realizing is in the process of doing that, it gets categorized and stored correctly. Listen, I think the number one cause of most of our gossip is we haven't found the line between I'm feeling something about this person and gossip. And the key is safe people. And let me just be frank, you don't know very many of them. Because they're people who are going to protect your confidentiality. That they're people who aren't going to turn on the person you're talking about. They're people who are going to point it back to your feeling. That they're people who are going to help you problem solve and make sure that we're working on a long-term solution. We're not just here to feel really, really good about our relationship because they're not. You need safe people. And yes, I think there's a place for not gossiping with regards to your perspective and all those different things. There's also a place to identify who are the people that you just need to process with, and it'll help you work through that. And the third thing, and probably it should be the first thing, but if I said it as the first thing, you'd all roll your eyes and think about what you're going to have for lunch. But it's the first thing, really, is learn to grieve with God via prayer. Listen, I know we think about prayer as a way to get what we want. What you see in the scriptures is it being this incredible tool to grieve with safe people. Go look at the Psalms. David's a bigger complainer than I am. Like he was processing all kinds of gross, nasty stuff, but he was doing it with God. And what is God? He's safe, which means God can interject ideas. He can keep it from being about like us versus them. Listen to the way Peter, someone who interacted with God in a way that, and understood him in ways that I never will. Listen to what Peter says. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. What's he saying? You're going to feel stuff. And you're going to need an outlet for those feelings. And God is a great candidate for that. Bottom line is, I think sometimes we oversimplify what it takes. Sometimes you're going to need a safe person to sit across from and go, hey, let me just, it's valid because it's feeling, but it's completely illogical, and I need a safe place to work this through. And finally, you know what's the most dangerous thing about being a complainer? This is the one that terrifies me and motivates me the most. Complainers can't get grace. They can connect with God on an intellectual level, but they can never appreciate the cross. Because complainers view life through a merit-based system. When you deserve it, you get loved. When you don't deserve it, you don't. Complainers don't get the cross. There's a story about these two brothers in Jesus' life, and one of them got grace, and the other one thought that he got perfection. And it's the parable of the prodigal son. Listen, if you're a complainer, then what that means is you need people to be perfect. And what makes that even more scary is that means you need to be perfect, which puts you in a dangerous spot, because it means either you earn God's love, which the Bible says you can't do, or you won't receive the cross, because you can't take a gift.
If you would like to engage further with Narrate Church, you can find contact information online, www.narratechurch.org. We would love to hear from you.